Welcome back to the Shrink Down, where psychology meets pop culture. Today, we're going to be talking about pressures society places on women as they age and difference in aging for women versus men, specifically in Hollywood, but also in general. As a reminder, we are four longtime friends. We met in grad school about 21 years ago, and we're also licensed clinical psychologists. So, what brought us to this topic was an article that came out recently called What Do We Do with an Icon? And the author wrote about older women, female actors, making a comeback. So, they mentioned Demi Moore and specifically a movie that she's in called The Substance. They also mentioned Pam Anderson. I know we've all seen her on social media. Everyone's talking about her and her no makeup routine that she's going for. And they talked about some other famous women who've kind of been out of the scene and kind of making a comeback now in some new movies that are coming out. But before we get into today's topic, we are going to share our 4-minute faves. So this is where we're going to share something that we really love or something we're really into at the moment, like a book, a TV show, movie, maybe somewhere we've traveled to that we really love, a hack beauty product, just something that we're into. All right, so let's get started today. So Terry, why don't you start us off? What are you loving? What are you sharing with us today?
Okay, so this might be a predictable one, but the Netflix short series, The Perfect Couple.
Ooh, started it
I
last night.
I
finally
don't know that
finished
one.
it last
Tell me.
night. I rarely can stick with any TV show or series. They rarely can keep my attention. I think my husband can vouch for this. I maybe finish 10% of what I start and watch. This definitely held my interest. It's definitely in that category of prestige TV. All the acting is phenomenal. The storyline is great. I actually read the book, which it's loosely based on. The author did give
How did it compare?
carte blanche. I only remembered aspects of it, but then when I read an article
Okay.
about it, it sounds like they really did shift a lot. So there's,
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's very
So be
loosely,
prepared for that.
yeah, very loosely pulled from the book. Great acting. Speaking of women and aging, Nicole Kidman is in it. Her face
Yeah.
doesn't move very well, but I think a testament to her acting that she is such a great actress. Also, though, her aesthetics fit the character in the role, but
Yeah.
highly recommend, very watchable, easy to just blow right through. So highly recommend The Perfect Couple on Netflix.
That's great.
Awesome.
Where does it rank with White Lotus? Because I know
Ooh, I like
we
White
both
Lotus
loved White
too,
Lotus.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
still put White Lotus a little bit above it,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it's up there.
It's good filler.
It's up there. I like
Okay.
it.
I started it last night, so I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
Good. How bad
Awesome.
is her wig? I've heard her wig's terrible.
Oh, that makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
it is horrible. It's horrible. Oh, is it? You didn't know?
Yeah.
Is
Real
she
bad.
is
I
she
read an
intention-
article that the wig's pretty
I
bad.
didn't read.
Why is she wearing it? Like, is it part of her character or
No, she is one of the gosh, I mean it's sort of related to what we're going to talk about probably theoretically. She's one of the actresses. There's a lot of actresses that don't want damage to their hair. They don't want to be in hair every
okay.
morning. They'll do makeup, but they don't want to do hair every day.
Gotcha.
And so they'll prefer a wig. But
Got you.
I heard, I have not seen the show, that this one is pretty
It's pretty
bad.
wiggy looking.
And she has
It's
fabulous.
wiggy looking.
Yeah.
She has fabulous hair too. I'm like,
Yeah,
she's
that's why I was like,
fabulous
why
hair.
Yeah.
why is this part of her
Yeah.
character?
Yeah.
No,
I don't,
so
and it's
interesting.
only a theory that people have that perhaps these actresses don't want damage done to
Heard
their
that.
hair.
So
that
Sansa
I mean that
from
piece
Game of
makes sense.
Thrones did
Mhm.
that.
Yes.
He
Yep.
wore a wig
Yeah.
because I think the first couple seasons she was like they were coloring my hair because she's a blonde naturally,
Yeah.
and she was like it was
Sure.
just too much. So then they switched to a wig. So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Wilhelmina, what are you
Yeah.
loving and sharing with us today?
So my husband and I love horror movies, and as we are approaching the fall and October, we usually kind of ramp up our horror movie watching and just sort of search out the good ones. So we came across one this weekend. I actually hadn't heard about it, but then was shocked because it has a 96% Rotten Tomatoes, which is almost unheard of
yeah.
for a
Yeah.
horror movie. So it's called The Oddity.
Mm.
It's an Irish horror movie. You can rent or buy it on Apple or Amazon. And it's very simple. It's about a psychic who's blind, and she is trying to like sort of solve her sister's brutal murder. And so she goes to the husband's house and is there and is trying to solve this mystery. It kind of checks all the horror movie boxes. It's got this like very creepy house where you're like, no one would ever really live here kind of thing. It's got characters you sort of love to hate. And what I love is that it is super simple, but it's super creepy, very eerie. It's got some paranormal stuff in there. It's definitely not for the like casual horror movie watcher. This is like if you liked Hereditary or like the new movie Longlegs. So this is more intense than
I'm
I'm
out.
out too.
yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
like
I was like, I don't think any of us are watching it aside. Well, me.
yeah, the three of you are out.
It's a good one for
I know.
you.
I can't sleep. I'm a scaredy cat. Besides it, I'm sorry for your. It sounds like great horror movie for those of you who enjoy horror movies.
It is. It was so good. But yes, it's so for if you love horror movies, this one's a great one to check out. Again, 96% Rotten Tomatoes, but yeah, not for you three. Not at all.
Yes, no.
All right, Lauren, what are you loving and sharing with us today?
My weighted vest. Have you guys been here?
Everywhere. I've seen it.
I
everywhere.
know.
I have friends who've gotten them. Yeah.
I just ordered
I got one. I got one and I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So it was a little bit difficult to get used to. And I mean, I think, for those of you that might not know, the idea, especially for women, is in kind of shifting workouts as we get older to something that's maybe lower impact, easier on our joints, but also still gives us a really good workout, helps with, strength and muscles, and bone density. So yeah, I recently got one. It was I felt a little bit, unsteady when I first put it on. So I did a bunch of walks on the treadmill first. I don't know. That was just me. Just to make sure that I kind of had my bearings about it. Cause it's sort of like almost like gives you sea legs for a minute but it really forces you to kind of, work on your alignment, your core. It's you sweat really good when you take a walk. So I'm obsessed.
So you're wearing it around the house too? Because there's that, what's her name, doctor, who I feel like she's always recording on Instagram.
Mary
and
Claire?
she's wearing hers.
Yes. Is that her? Yeah.
I think that's who it is. So are you wearing it around the house too, or just when you're exercising?
I did the other day for like a little bit of cleaning, like doing the dishes, and you just keep sweating. Yeah. It's great. I love it.
How many pounds is yours?
Right now wearing. So you're supposed to do somewhere between, you're going to put me on the spot. I think it's like 8 to 12% of your body weight or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So what they do is you can start really low and then you can go up, or you can go, up from there.
So are you going to be them on
I'm
this?
not going to let you do the math on my body weight. So,
are you going to be them on this at pickup with her weighted vest and her weighted bracelets, which I see so many of those. And I'm like,
the giant Stanley cup. It's like a weight.
Okay.
No, my husband was like, it's so bizarre. It's like you're like walking out to a SWAT team or something. That said, because it looks like funky, right? That said, so we went on a walk and we have a 3-mile route that we do, my husband and I together. So we went on a walk. So I did 2 miles of it. And then I was like, hey, just put it on for the last mile. He did the last mile and he's like, it's fine. It's whatever, whatever. The next day I came home and my weighted vest was sitting on the kitchen table because he went out and
he used it.
Yeah. Oh, he loved it. Yeah. Yeah. So weighted vest.
My friends just like, it's a couple, a husband and wife just bought a pair, and they're both, because they started like doing walks. And so they're like, every night we're walking and we're both wearing our vests. Yeah.
My physical therapist, as a side note, recommended that you do wear for household chores to ease in and then start wearing it for walks.
So that was, I felt a little funky. So I just naturally went onto the treadmill because I was like, at least I can hold on to the treadmill. And I'm not like in like 2 miles from my house and I feel like I'm going to fall over or something. And you do need to kind of get used to the way it feels on your body. But yeah,
that's you need to send us the link.
I will. Yeah, I will.
Share that. Good
Vanessa, what about you?
Yes. So today I'm going to be sharing my favorite author / book series. You all know it. And the reason why I thought of this is because when I was looking through the news this weekend, there was an article where they interviewed Margot Robbie, who was photographed with this author, Sarah J. Maas, who's my favorite author. And so they were photographed at a cafe, and there was like all this like speculation of like, are they just friends, or is she going to be starring in one of her movies? So they're trying to take her A Court of Thorns and Roses series and make it into a series. And so it's been in the works for a while, so nobody knows what's going on with it. But anyway, people were like speculating whether it was her. So anyway, in this article, she was being interviewed and she was like, let me talk to her and see what I can do. So it's kind of joking around. So I thought like, okay, I'm going to share this series. So everybody knows that I love it. Sarah J. Maas, she's written, everyone in the book world calls it ACOTAR. So it's fantasy fiction with like a heavy romance. So it's like romantasy. So I like to nerd out and read that kind of genre. So that's one of her series. It's not finished yet. And then she has another one, Throne of Glass, that is finished. It's a very long series. The books are very long, very thick
Okay.
books, but they're excellent. So if you want to check out a new series, try a new genre, I swear it's
Now,
awesome.
do you think, from what you know about the books, do you think Margot Robbie is a good choice for what would be like a character?
Yeah, so I think she would. I don't know who she would play
Oh, okay.
because speaking of like older actresses, like in the book, the main sisters are like young adults. So I don't know
Interesting.
Mm.
Okay.
if they would cast her, but there's like plenty of other characters that like this is like fantasy, right? So like
Yeah.
people look a certain, like they talk about in the book,
Yeah.
like people look a certain age, but they're like
Sure.
1,000 years old, right? So like
Okay.
she
Yeah.
certainly could be one of these other characters because they don't really have an age, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Or
mean,
maybe
I think it'd
she's
be
going
cool.
behind the scenes,
Yeah.
Who
directing
knows?
or
Exactly.
something like
Yeah,
that.
Pulling
that
like a
too.
Reese Witherspoon, where she's
Yeah.
going to get the rights.
Executive
and then,
producer or whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So who knows? So yeah, so I was super excited and
Interesting.
was like, oh, I would love to see that and like, in film, like on the set. So anyway, that's my
Oh,
share for today.
that is going to happen. That book is so popular. Like it,
Yeah.
when it happens, who knows? But that will absolutely be made into a
Yeah.
limited series or a movie.
I mean,
It's too popular.
she's in contract with someone right now. I forget who, but no one has heard a peep about it in a long
Interesting.
time. So
Yeah.
nobody knows like her characters it's just like such like crazy like world building, and it's just so much detail and so many characters, and she has been interviewed, the author Sarah J Maas, saying like she wants it to be done right, basically.
Just
Like,
take a
it's got to
while.
be done right. And so she's being really picky about how it's done. So
Well,
anyway,
That's kind of how Outlander was. Like she had a
That's
whole
true.
series
Yeah.
before those came out because she was like, I'm not giving rights to these until it's going to be done well
right-
and
right
right.
way.
Yeah.
That's true.
I know I need to watch that and read
Oh,
that.
yes, you do.
I know.
Yes,
It's on my
you
list.
do.
I know. It's on my list.
I think we talk about this every trip. And
I do.
Wilhelmina,
I
you
try to
recommended
convince
Anna.
everyone
Yes.
to season 1, episode 6, the wedding. You're welcome, Bernie. Just that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. Watched it
gosh.
so many times.
I know. I see. I seriously need to. All right. So now that we've shared our faith today, we're going to get into today's topic. So in the article that kicked off the discussion for today, one of the actors they mentioned is Demi Moore, and specifically her role in a movie called The Substance, which none of us have watched yet, but Wilhelmina, you watched the trailer, correct?
I watched the trailer and I will be trying to get to see it in the next week. So I will report back when I
It
see
just came out,
So
correct?
Great.
it just came out.
Yeah,
I think
it
maybe
just came
this
out.
weekend, like
Yeah.
this last weekend. Yes.
So the kind of gist of this movie is that she's an older actress who's snubbed for a role. So she decides to take a street drug that results in instantly making her more youthful. So the kind of conundrum here is that it's not like her body turns into this like youthful version of herself, but it's more of like, think Matrix. So her older version is in like this coma status while her younger version is out living life. And of course, there's a negative psychological side effect to using this drug. So the question that this movie basically proposes is, what lengths are women willing to go to maintain a youthful appearance? And obviously there's going to be a difference between like Hollywood folks. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, maybe we'll all get each other's thoughts on that. Hollywood versus kind of women in general. So, what lengths are we willing to go to? And more importantly, what are the pressures that we're feeling from society in how we look? So obviously that's probably driving the things that women are doing to keep a more youthful appearance. So I'm going to throw it out to you guys. So what are some thoughts here about just the things that women are doing? Maybe Hollywood, starting off with Hollywood, like maybe how does that differ from kind of everyday women and the expectations?
So, one of my first thoughts I have in us discussing this topic is the difference in terms of access that we have to celebrities and their strategies, maybe for lack of a better word, compared to maybe 10, even 15, 20 years ago. I think in general, female celebs might be a bit more open about what they're doing versus trying to keep it more covert. But also in the era of social media, and just we have so much more accessible at our fingertips than we did before in general as women, I think, and as women as you're aging. And so I think it does pique a curiosity and sort of for like the everyday woman. And I think it brings what maybe was only available or people knew about in Hollywood and Beverly Hills, and it's brought it to middle America. So I do think in general, access and even access to knowledge, in addition to access to actual services, has changed in addition to how we view aging and youth and all of that for women, if that makes sense.
But is that a good thing?
I don't know. I think
I think that's the question we all struggle with, right?
Yeah, because what we're talking about is how do women basically continue to stay and look young.
Right.
That's the thing, is women are considered to be still beautiful if they still look young. That's
Which
sort
is
of the
different
issue.
from men,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Like, so that's
Totally.
Men, gray hair, they start,
debonair.
yes, the silver fox, you just get more distinguished. Women, oh, she looks great for her age because she has clearly done a lot with her face to keep her looking the same way she did 20 years ago. That's the
Or a
difference.
version, because
I think
But that's not new, right? Like
No.
that concept is not new.
No.
But what
No.
Terry, you're talking about is the ability
no, yeah.
to then kind of
execute,
chase that
execute
right.
some of that.
That's kind of changed, where maybe back in the day that was something that only people in Hollywood, or really rich people could kind of access.
Right.
And now we see that, like you said, middle America can access that if they want to as well.
Well, and
So I think there's
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think there's a difference between chasing after youthful appearance and figuring out ways to be healthy and, cognitively aware as we get older, right? And I think they get really mixed together.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
Hollywood specifically, I think there's definitely more of a focus for women on youthful appearance versus health and wellness. At
And I
least
think
I think that's what the movie alone, the script would suggest. The fact that the script was even developed and this turned into a movie just kind of shows the difference between men and women in Hollywood and in general in aging.
And I know that, traditionally I remember learning in graduate school that typically women are attracted to power and status. If we're discussing heterosexual cis type of relationships, where women are attracted to power and status and men are attracted to youthfulness. And those are the traits that have held up consistently over time. And that hasn't changed much. If we learned that 15, 20 years ago, that seems to have just magnified over to where we're at the point where little girls are wanting their Christmas lists are all Sephora items because 8 to 12-year-old girls are starting to chase youthfulness. And that's become, at what point is it a hobby and fun to play around with mom's makeup versus are there girls in college and in their early 20s using retinol and using anti-aging products to the point where I actually heard on the news this morning that California is banning the sale of any beauty products that have active ingredients to girls under the age of 18. So things like vitamin C, retinol, anything that's considered an active ingredient, because there's over prolific use and it could actually be damaging their skin.
Yeah, because they still have it in their skin.
Yeah.
I've heard that. I've heard it's not good for them to use all of these serums because it's like it's blocking kind of their natural. Yes. Yeah.
And is this pendulum swung
Terry,
so far that this is where we're at now, where it's not just Demi Moore age women or women our age in their 40s, where now it's women from age 8 or 9, little girls from age 8 or 9 or maybe 18 all the way up through the lifespan. I don't know.
Well, women in their 20s are getting Botox.
Well, yeah, so I was looking at the stats for Botox and it wasn't high. So like for that age group, it definitely wasn't high. Like the biggest consumers of Botox is 40 to 54, which that makes sense, right?
Tracks.
But there was this group and I was like, I wouldn't even have thought there would have been a percentage, right? Like, why is there even a percentage? It's small, but yeah, there are some who are using
preventative Botox.
Yes.
Which is kind of crazy. But Terry, you referenced something, and it's interesting. You referenced the research back from when we were in graduate school, and I'm sure it's still consistent about sort of what the attraction piece. But so men are attracted to youth. But is that why women are chasing a youthful appearance? I don't think so.
So do you know what?
I don't think women are doing it for men.
No, in fact, when we broached this topic, my my very first initial automatic thought was the female gaze versus the male gaze. And who are you
Mhm.
dressing for? Who are you getting ready
Who
for?
are you doing it for?
Who are you
Right.
doing it
Yeah.
for?
Yeah.
And I remember being younger and having someone older than me, maybe a family member, say, "Oh, no, you're dressing for the other women at the party, your outfit."
Yeah.
And I remember at the
Because
time,
they're the ones who's going to be
and
looking
I
at you.
thought,
Yeah.
nah. And then this is maybe 10 or 15 years ago. My husband and I were getting ready to go out to dinner, and I was wearing a polka dot blazer that I really liked. It was black with white.
I know this
Yes.
blazer. I know this blazer.
Yes. It's black with white polka dots. I thought it was so cute and looked so trendy with whatever. And I wore it. And I remember we went out to a couple's dinner. I wore it the whole night, came back, and my husband waited a day or two. And then I think I went to wear it again somewhere else. And he was like, you know, and he never, ever, ever comments on what I wear, ever. 20 plus years we've been together. And he said, I don't know about that blazer. It's just not. And I realized the blazer was not made for the male gaze. And
Right.
so what is chasing a more, using Botox, dyeing your hair,
Right.
wearing polka dot blazers
Right.
versus not polka dot blazers? Who is
Yeah.
that for?
Well, I
Right.
always think about like, okay, so men's magazines often have women on them. I mean, we're talking like old school men's
Maxim
magazines,
Yeah.
right?
type.
But like,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
Maxim,
Yeah.
things like that. And women's magazines also have women on them because women want to see women.
Other
So you
women. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, women are looking at other women to see how they look, to see how they dress. We're not dressing for men. I mean, we're not
Right.
trying to look good for men. Sometimes we are, right? Like
Right.
sometimes,
Yes,
sure.
obviously.
But
Right.
like I agree with you, Terry. Like it is women more often are looking at women than they are.
And that might be slightly different than the reason women in Hollywood are doing
Yes.
anti-aging and things like they're
Yeah.
doing that likely for their livelihoods.
Yes.
Right. They're not
Right.
getting the job because
Right.
they, are not looking a certain way. Right. So
Right.
like the roles usually, like think James Bond, right?
Right.
Like the dashing,
Yep.
spy, and the young, like then the
Yep.
woman's is like young woman sidekick. Right. So like that's historically kind of like Hollywood. Right. So they're not getting the job, which is different. I mean, obviously I think some women like maybe that does make a difference for their job, but like the majority of women, that's not playing a significant role, I would say. I say significant because I'm sure it does matter sometimes, whether we like it or not. People look at the way you look and
Right.
they judge you or they like you better or,
Pamela Anderson is referenced in that article, and she's getting all sorts of attention for not wearing makeup.
Mhm.
I know.
Mhm.
Like
Alicia Keys has
right?
not worn
Yes.
makeup for years now, I think.
Years.
Performances,
Yeah.
red
It was when she
carpets.
did The Voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
that in general,
But men would never get that attention.
never. And women, though, also in Hollywood are likely used to having a certain amount of attention, and that Hollywood is so fickle and that attention fades so quickly. And then it's how do I maintain that level of attention, or how do I get it back? Yeah, I experienced it once. And how do I get it back? And how do I reclaim that? And I think that has to be, like Lauren said, it's tied into both their livelihood. It's how they make money and pay bills and probably feed their kids and pay their mortgage. In addition to, it feels really good. And if they've had a
Mhm.
taste of that, how do they, are they chasing the dragon
Maintain
in a
that.
way? How
Yeah.
do they get that back again? So I think it's reinforced for women in Hollywood from a couple different angles, the livelihood as well as the
Right.
attention piece.
Well, and in Hollywood, you used to basically hit an age limit where you could play the leading lady and the cute little rom-com and the whatever until a certain age. And then you kind of disappeared until you came back as like
The
the
mom.
matron lead, like,
mom.
yes.
Yeah.
And which was never a lead, which was never whatever. Whereas men kept being able to go on and have these
Yep.
roles. Like even, I mean, like look at Yellowstone, right? Kevin Costner, he's 69. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's so hot. He's so hot. And this continues to happen in men don't have to take a step back.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas women in the past have, and I think that's happening less now. I
Yeah,
think
definitely.
we're starting to see this like, wait, women can continue to stay like, be leading ladies at all ages. But part of that is also they are continuing to try to stay youthful while they're doing that.
Well, I was listening to somewhere on Instagram. There was like they were interviewing a person, a plastic surgeon,
Mhm.
and they were. I thought it was so interesting that the majority of like women who are coming in for things, like whatever the things may be, are attractive women who are
Mhm.
trying to maintain the same look, right? So like I've
Yeah.
always been a very attractive looking woman and I want to maintain that because that's part of my identity, right? Like
Yeah.
I
Right.
identify as a good looking woman. And so then they were talking about like kind of the negative side of that, that the littlest things, the changes
Mhm.
that they're experiencing, they want to fix it. And then you start to
Yes.
fix too many things, right? And so, I think there part of it is about like, how you identify with how you look, right? And that's not just Hollywood, like that any woman could experience that where it's like, this is part of my identity of looking a certain way, whatever that may be,
Mhm.
and I want to maintain that as I get older.
It's interesting. I was listening do you guys know who Kelly Stafford is? Matt Stafford's wife.
Mhm.
Matt Stafford's the quarterback. He used to be the
Mm,
quarterback for the
mhm.
Detroit Lions, but he's over in Los Angeles now. So he's Los Angeles Rams quarterback.
Mm.
She has a podcast, and she just recently, within the last couple of weeks, was talking about so she kind of is this line. Okay. She's from the South. She really kind of prides herself on, and I think this is true, on really kind of sticking with her roots, even though she's now in Hollywood. So
Mm.
she's like on this line where she lives in the same neighborhood as the Kardashians. Like her kids are friends with Khloe Kardashian's kids. Like, right. So she's like, but her family is from Georgia and they have these Southern roots, and she's very close to all her siblings and her parents and talks about them a lot. Anyhow, she was talking a couple of weeks ago about coming clean about recent work she had done
Mm.
Mm.
and how she went in for a little bit of Botox. And I would say she's mid to late 30s at this point. So she was saying she went in for like her forehead. And once she was there, and it was like, like a little boutique kind of medical spa, and there was a woman working with her. So I'm not exactly sure of credentials, but like a nurse practitioner, a nurse, whatever, working with her, that as she's marking her face for Botox, suggested a number. What's it when it goes below then? It's fillers? Like what's
Filler.
above the eyes, it's Botox. Okay. So then she started suggested things below the eyes. And Kelly's saying she's never had this done. And she said what all of a sudden her face was a map with marks all over it. And she was acknowledging like she got caught up in not pressure from this woman, but just in this, oh, she's saying there's something that could be corrected about me, and I'm not going to say no. I'm saying yes. And then all of a sudden she said she said her face was frozen. She didn't like it. She wanted to get it taken out, like all of these kinds of things. And just the conversation was about kind of her regret and getting caught up in that. And it's really interesting, right? Because she is sort of one step into Hollywood with the people she kind of runs with in Los Angeles, but then she's also this woman of a certain age that is kind of struggling with that, maybe like the rest of us.
Well, I think it's interesting that like there's this expectation that women, look a certain way, but then it's also like this dirty secret if you do
Mhm.
Botox
Yes.
and
Mhm.
filler. Like
Yeah,
she's
I
like, "Oh,
couldn't
I have
believe
to
she
come
was
clean
acknowledging it.
and tell you
Yes.
that I did this." And it's like, I don't know, like I feel like there's an issue there with that. Like, I mean, I'm a very much of the like do what feels good to you sort of thing. So
Mhm.
like I don't feel
Mhm.
like it should be like a dirty secret if you choose to do that. Like I feel like, I hope that society's pressure on women, changes over time and it's different. But like, I also feel like if that makes you feel good right now,
Hmm.
right? Like, why does
Yeah.
it feel like such a like, oh, like dirty secret to tell people that you use Botox or like you use filler? But I also thinking of that person, like I feel like that's such a terrible provider to go to.
I
Right.
know.
So,
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
in full disclosure, like I get
right.
Botox and the person I go to is so conservative. She would never ever
Yeah.
suggest anything. Like she'll come in and be
Yep.
like, "So, what are you thinking today?" Like and it's very much driven by whatever I say. It's not like, "Here, let me make a bunch of suggestions for you." So,
And
I
I
don't
wonder
Right.
if that's more of that Hollywood, like
right, perhaps
assumptive
yeah.
kind of
But and
thinking.
then
Like,
how
I
do
just
you
Yep.
assume you want all these things
and
done.
how do you
Yeah.
differentiate trying to incorporate that as a woman into as your identity and formulating your opinion, looking at the marks on your face and saying, well, maybe I shouldn't, versus are they trying to upsell me for their business and make more money
Mhm.
so
Right.
Mhm.
that
Like, is this
is this
real? Like,
real,
yeah.
right? Is it's also a business. It's a huge probably
Yeah,
bazillion-dollar
right.
industry. So
Huge business.
how are you as a woman sitting there by
Right.
yourself with an expert, quote unquote, or a self-proclaimed expert, and trying to navigate?
Right.
Are they just trying to make another grand or however much it costs off of me versus would I look better with this?
Well, and this reminds me, and now I'm wishing I had pulled it up, but I didn't even think about it until we got into this. There was an article that came out a couple years ago. I don't know if it was New York Times. I'd have to find it, but it was this woman and she was the journalist and she went kind of like undercover to a plastic
Oh, I think I
surgeon.
read
Do you
that.
know? Yes.
I think I
And
read that.
said, and basically was like, what kind of like, what should I do? And basically he like, sort of the same thing as what you were saying, Lauren, like
Marked her whole body.
marked her all up. And she basically
Ugh.
wrote a whole article about it. And she said, and it like broke my heart because at the very
Yeah.
end, she says, and yet now I look at myself and I see all of those marks and think, oh, is that? Should I? Whereas she went in to be like,
She
this is
never
so
thought.
ridiculous. She never thought anything about it. But once he had done that,
Oh yeah.
it made her start to question. And she didn't do it, but she's like, I will never not see that now when I
Well,
look at
and
my body, look at my face. And that's so sad.
Sad.
well,
Yeah.
and
No,
so
that
like
is sad.
Vanessa, you said, and I think it's a really good point. Do what makes you feel good and what you want for you.
Yes.
How do we know that that motive is clear
No,
when
I
we
don't think we
have
do.
all of
We do
these
not.
Yeah.
influences muddying the water? And it circles all the way back to what Terry said at the beginning of our access to what all of these people are doing is so much greater. It creates this false pressure,
Right.
real and false pressure on all of us to say, no, I'm doing this because it makes me feel good. It's like,
And I
well,
think,
am I?
we,
Or am I doing this because somebody else did it and I saw it and I feel like I should? And right?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard to like tease that out, like how much of it is just you being like, this is something I want to do for myself versus
Right.
like there's this ideal kind of way to be, like
Yeah.
I
What are we
think
all
that is hard.
chasing? I
I do
know.
feel like some people are more kind of like lean one way more just kind of naturally than the other. Like I can vividly tell you, like as a kid, I was like loved makeup and there was no social media then. So I was not
Right.
watching YouTube or other people. Like I just was fascinated by it. And I was like, oh, and so like I'm still like a big makeup girl, like you all know, like I basically
Yeah.
wake up with makeup on my face, right? Like so, I'm blush blind. I have blush blindness. So like I like but that's always been me, right? So like
Right.
but
That's consistent with who you are.
that's consistent
Yes.
with right? Like I've always kind of been into like makeup and all the things, right? So I do think like some people kind of are more probably inclined to go that route for lots of different reasons, and then there's other people who don't feel so much. But yeah, I think the water is muddy. Like I don't know. Like I think in my head like, oh, I'm doing this for me, but I know also that like there is this perception of women when you look a certain way that like you're like older, like and what do you know sort of thing, even though you would think that like as a woman, like, oh, you have all this wisdom, right? And I think that that's more of like how we perceive older men, right? Like this older doctor, this older,
Right.
person who's well known versus like an older like woman. I think there's a little bit sometimes of a negative, like, are you up to date with, are you current? Do you know what's going on? Right. Like, so I think yeah, I think it's hard to differentiate between the two. And there's just a lot of
and
pressures.
the menu of
Yeah.
options out there that you can do to your body, your
Ugh.
face has never been greater. If you would have told anyone on this planet 15 years ago that people would be getting butt implants, I think,
Oh my
right,
God.
the BBL or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I don't think
Oh my
anyone
God.
would believe it. It seems so absurd, among other things.
Yes.
And so I just think the menu it just seems to be ever expanding.
And but it's not even just like Botox, filler, plastic surgery. Think about all the supplements, and we
Oh,
all
yes.
get sucked into this, right? Like, I mean, the supplements, the vitamins, the like, I mean, even the like topical things, like,
Oh, yeah.
like my husband calls them my magic potions. He's like, you have another magic potion that's arrived because it's like, all the things you put on your face. There's retinol and there's this cream and that cream. So
Oh,
it's like
it's ridiculous. I put this like oil on every morning. That's like this tiny little thing. It's like over $100, and I'm like, this better be doing something in this. I'm not just putting like Vaseline on my face. Like, I'm like,
And the thing is, you don't have a way to know if it's not. So
No.
you don't have a way to say, if I don't do these things, I'll look this way. And if I do these things, I'll look this way. That's a total unknown.
That's the thing that I think where I try to balance the like, okay, what do I want? What's me? What's, outside of pressure? I think the water is all muddy. I agree. And yet what I go with is like, well, what if there is something I could have done? Put this oil on, put this on, do this where it really did help, but you don't know. So it's all this banking on the like hope that it's doing something, hope that you'll feel good in 10, 15, 20 years about how you look. But probably we're negating a little bit of this, like it probably more of it starts inside than it does outside.
Mhm.
Like in terms of our
100%.
self-esteem, how we feel about
Yeah.
ourselves. And then anything else is like a bonus, right? Like if we actually feel good about ourselves, we feel like we can go for walks with our weighted vests. We can do these things. We
Yeah.
can get up. And then we kind of can add on if we want, if that's something we want, great. But if we're doing that to feel better about ourselves and we kind of don't to start with, it's not gonna
Oh, absolutely. I think
it's
you
not
have to
gonna
have like
help.
a
Well
certain level
said.
of like confidence and self-esteem. Yeah,
Yep.
like I think it
Yep.
starts from there because you can do all the things and feel terrible if you don't feel good. Yeah, absolutely from the inside. You have to have some good self-esteem and confidence.
Well, and every like few months that article comes out where they, interviewed somebody that turned 105 and they're like, what's your secret? And they're like, I drink Coca-Cola and
Smoke
whiskey
cigs.
and smoke a pack a day. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so none of this matters, right? It's all genetics. And if you won the genetic lottery, congratulations. Otherwise, like
Yeah.
we're all
Well,
just
and
spitting into the wind.
speaking of genetics, there is like that is part of it too, right?
Yes,
Like if you're like
yes.
people in your like, just generally like, aging, some people age better than others. Like the more melanin you have in your skin,
Yeah.
the better you age, right? So like there are those factors too that contributed to
Right.
it. My grandma's like what, 96?
Yes,
And
it's a good
she's
example.
96 years old. I can tell you that like she doesn't do, I would say the only thing that I can tell you that she does that's like, I guess is kind of healthy is like she's never been a big drinker.
Mm.
So like every once in a while she'll be like,
Yep.
I feel like having a beer. And she'll just drink like a little, like almost like a shot glass
Like a
worth
cup
of
of beer.
beer. Or she'll be like, I feel like wine. So like she just drinks like these little bits. So that's like the only thing. And she never smoked. She was never a smoker.
Yeah.
That's
So
a big
like
one.
that's like the two things. I mean, and she's always like, she's like active. She's like, she's always going
Moving.
somewhere. She's always
Yeah.
doing something. Like we always joke around and say like, man, this woman, like, she's always got something to do. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're 96.
But isn't that interesting? You didn't mention a single procedure, a single expensive serum, like anything like
Oh,
that.
well, no. No, that's funny that you say that. So like, no, she was like, she's Pons. She's from the Pons era.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So every
Love
night
it.
she puts her Pons on her face.
Which is
Oh.
face cream
So,
for
like,
those who might not know what that is. It's a face cream.
Pons is face cream. Yes.
Yeah.
So like she still does her Pons.
I love it.
Yeah, she still does her Pons. But like I was thinking more of like her longevity of being
Mhm.
96 and
Yeah,
whatever.
but all of that is kind of goes
Yeah.
hand in hand, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so definitely.
I feel like people will often come up to me now and they're like, what do you do with your face? And I'll kind of say like, but I'm like, I had horrific acne and super oily skin all of my adolescence, and now it's paying off. I was like,
That's right.
it's like years
I've
of
done my
oily
time.
skin.
Right.
I'm like, so much oil. It's all there.
It's preserving your beauty.
And some Botox,
Right.
oily skin and some
Right.
Botox. There we go. That's my secret. You have it live here today.
All right, ladies. Any more thoughts on our topic for today?
I'm just happy these people are getting in the news and getting roles.
Same.
I know.
That's
Me
great.
too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
I'm
great.
glad that we're having this discussion. I'm
Yeah.
glad that like Hollywood is seems to be changing their kind of tune on things, and it'll be interesting to see. So Wilhelmina and I have daughters, but like, to see how things change for them, like when they're our age, and to see, are we seeing more Pam Andersons without, the makeup on? And that's the new kind of thing
Normal.
to do. Like,
Yeah.
Or
what's the new
more
normal?
8-year-olds
Like, yeah.
at Sephora.
Or 5-year-olds at Sephora.
Right.
Right.
Right. It could go either way.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well,
Oh.
thank you for joining us today on the Shrink Down. And we hope that you will join us next time so we can share some more of our thoughts with you on, what's going on in pop culture.